before we get started, have you guys heard about Skull's fundraiser yet? I mean, I've already mentioned it, I believe, twice, and it's still going on. For those of you who know, several fans and a few friends of Skullagrim heard about all the struggles that he's been dealing with ever since they moved east, with all the extra expenses and costs that they've had to deal with the move and keeping up with the house. So if you guys are so inclined, you want to help them out, check out the fundraiser that they're having. It's basically going to be an auction with a lot of really cool stuff. There's some stuff in there that even I'm interested in, so just I got the link in the description, so check it out if you can, and help a good friend of mine out. So with that out the way, let's get on with the video. Hey guys, what's up? Brought the microphone a lot closer. I know it doesn't look as good when it's in frame, but I want to make myself sound a lot clearer than in my past videos, so hopefully this works. You guys can let me know. Also, please excuse the scruff. I like to call this my quarantine look, I guess, because of all the craziness that's going on lately, though I'm doing okay. Don't, haven't caught it yet, cross your fingers, all that stuff. However, well, on good news, making another video. I, had to hurry up and scramble to try to get some stuff out this month, and I'm going right into the video that I kind of hinted that I would say that I would make in, I believe, the last video I made, and that's on supposedly what the best sword is to get. Now, I know I've touched on this question before, either in like live chats or in I'm pretty sure I made like a past video where I kind of went over some of the information that I'm about to go into now, but I don't remember which video that is. And not only that, but I'm honestly not expecting people to go digging in my past videos, especially like several years back, to try to find something. I haven't even properly organized my channel yet to make it easy for people to find stuff like that, and I really need to get on with that. And plus, a lot of my old videos, quite frankly, I think they suck, so I'm not going to expect people to go and look for that, subject themselves to those old videos. So I figure I might as well just touch on it again, even if I end up being a bit redundant, but I'm going to try to tackle this in a somewhat more unique way, because I know how this question tends to be answered, because it's an obvious answer for anybody who knows anything about swords. But I also want to kind of give it a little bit more of a personal flavor, and what I mean by that is kind of touch on this subject from someone with my perspective. What I mean by that is as somebody who's mostly focused on Chinese swords, with somewhat less experience with the other two big markets for swords, Japanese swords and European swords. I wanted to kind of touch on this more from the Chinese side of things and kind of help people to find something that will suit them, in my particular, field of, study, but I will touch on the other fields as well. Though I should say right off the bat, when it comes to like my knowledge of the market, I mean, it is fairly limited overall, but I know more about the Chinese sword market than I do the Japanese one, but I know a bit about the Japanese one, and I know more about the Japanese one than I know about the European one, but I know at least a little bit about it. So with that context, that's how I'm going to kind of touch on this question. And that first I'm going to touch on if there really is such a thing as a best sword. I'm pretty sure some of you guys who practice sword stuff already know the answer to that. And then I'm going to start touching on individual needs and what you might want to look for. So, first of all, the question itself, what's the best sword? The problem with that question is not just how open-ended it is and how generic it is, but it tends to come from someone who doesn't really know much about swords. They tend to be ignorant on the subject. Now, I am not saying this to insult somebody who asks that question. It's not an insult at all. It's not about belittling them, and it's not about trying to put them on the spot and make fun of them or anything. It's just a factual statement. If you're going to be asking, what's the best of so-and-so, it usually means you don't know too much about what you're asking about. And anybody who is excited about, any particular field or hobby or whatever, one of the first things they want to ask is what's the best one, because they want the best thing, right? Especially if you have a lot of cash to spend or you got a lot of free time or you jump into a particular interest, you want the best of the best. And then somebody usually has to slow you down and go like, hold on. In the most trivial of things, you happen to see this. Like, for example, like, what's the best cell phone, right? Sorry. Like, what's the best cell phone? What's the best one to get? And you typically might get like from another enthusiast, or say a fanboy, or somebody's trying to sell you something, or they might tell you, oh, best, like, well, for example, if you're looking for an Android phone, because some people say iPhone and other people say Android, and then you got that war going on. But then you might have, okay, let's say you say, what's the best Android phone to get? Oh, Samsung, definitely. You want to get yourself a Samsung Galaxy. Unless you want the best camera, and in that case, you might want to get your hands on a Pixel, because they tend to have better cameras. It's slightly better. Unless you want a gaming phone, then you might want to get like the Redbox or something, or you might want to get one of those Asus phones. Unless you see what I mean? Like, you see how things start getting chopped up? Like, first it seemed to be this ultimate best, and then now you kind of like tailor it to what they might actually want. And I see this a lot. Consoles, what's the best consoles? What's the best PC parts to put in your PC when you're first building one? Things like that. And then the answer gets more nuanced, more complicated, and more specific to the person's needs as you get further into it. Same thing can be said about swords. The answer to that is going to come down to, what do you need out of it? What is your level of expertise with these things? And what is your particular field of study? And that is going to determine what's the best sword for you. In general, though, for anybody who's like, what's the best sword in terms of like, the usual nerd wars of katana versus long sword, zen versus dao, whatever. Ultimately, it's going to come down to, what are you using it for? Weapons are tools. We are a tool-making species. This is what we do. We make tools because our own particular faculties are usually not suited for the task that our big brains tend to put us on. There are a lot of things that human beings are able to do together, and because of us thinking and using things like mathematics and all this, which is also tools, by the way, we tend to want to build things or achieve things or accomplish things that our physical bodies can't really do on their own. So we make tools to offset those weaknesses. Weapons are among those tools. They are a very specific tool for a very specific purpose, and you may get into arguments over whether that purpose is benevolent or not, or the ethics of it, but just for the sake of this video, we're just simply talking about the fact that they're tools. And tools are made for a specific job. What's the job you're trying to achieve with the tool called a sword? And what is your level of skill using those tools? That's what's going to determine what's best for you. So if you happen to be using a style of combat that is more thrust-oriented than cutting-oriented, you're obviously going to want a sword that works for that. Just like if you're trying to hammer a nail, you're going to want a hammer for that. You're not going to be using some other tool. You're not going to be using a saw for it. But then, like, say, okay, I want a saw because I'm trying to cut this wood. Well, what type of saw do you want? Regular handsaw, hacksaw, chainsaw? What do you want? Depends on the usage, and it depends on your need, right? And then also, depending on what type of these particular saws you want, what's your level of skill in using them? Because you might want something that's a little bit easier for you because you haven't handled it before. Or if you're a little bit more advanced, now you want something that's going to give you a whole lot of different ways to do it, right? Same thing with swords. Are you more cut-oriented or thrust-oriented? Well, I already talked about thrusting. You feel more cut-oriented because you want to do this. Or let's say, you're training an army of people and you don't have a lot of time to teach them how to use their melee weapons. You're going to want something that's a little bit easier to use, or at least a little bit quicker for you to train them with. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at so many different cultures, how many of them gravitated towards single-edged weapons. Because with a more thrust-oriented type of weapon, like somebody who has the free time to really hone their craft, yeah, they might want more of a cut-and-thrust sword. Use a bit of both, something that's more versatile. But if you're just simply training your average foot soldier, or somebody who isn't going to be spending huge amounts of their time as a career fighter or warrior or whatever, you're going to want something that works with their natural tendencies. And let's face it, it's more natural to swing than it is to stab and thrust. Hence, how the saber has become ubiquitous in so many different cultures. So that to some people, well, there you go, that's the best sword because it's easier to work with. Hang on, swordsmanship is still a rather hard thing to learn, But I'm just saying, compared to others, specifically speaking, relatively speaking, it's a little bit easier. And then you go with something. Me, I happen to be somebody who likes versatile weapons. I like a bit of both, which is why I like the Gen, because it's a cut and thrust, so it's versatile. It also, now this comes down to your needs. Now, before we start focusing on your art and then what you want from that, let's kind of touch on sort of the elephant in the room, sort of. And that's the person who wants a sword because they just want to cut stuff up in their backyard. Right? Let's face it, a lot of people who are, looking online on YouTube or whatever, and they see these cool swords, they want to get their hands on one. They have no training. And to be perfectly honest, how many people in the world really know how to use a sword the way it was intended? Even among martial artists. Let's be real. I know in my particular chosen martial art, Chinese martial arts, even the people who train in sword forms every day, they're not swordsmen. They might know their forms pretty well, and then they might know their basic movements and drills, and they're pretty good at that. And they might, you put them in a pre-structured two-person drill, they look great. But then you suddenly throw them in a sparring situation, and they don't know what to do. And the sword that they own is not a real sword, and they have no intentions of getting a real one. That's most of those martial artists out there. There are very few of us crazy people who I want to know how to properly use a real sword for our own interest. We know we're not going to be going out there fighting off bandits or other killer swordsmen or something like that. It's just our own personal interest. But we are a niche group within a niche group. Within a niche group. So there aren't that many people who fit that category of I want a live sword for training and learning the art and fully understanding the art and researching it and looking up old treatises and old manuals. And this is we're a small little group. Most of the people who want to get a sword, they want it because it's cool. And every now and then they can slice up the Tommy mats and bottles in their backyard. They're a larger group than you realize. What should they get? What's the best sword for them? Some people are going to be like, well, katanas, because they're so easy to get these days. You can get something from Musashi for fairly cheap, and it'll be good enough for their purposes, right? It's a decent answer. But there are also certain swords that can fit that category in the European market. There's some decent long swords or European sabers out there that you could do that with. And the Chinese market has been growing, so lately some people are beginning to look at the Chinese stuff and going, those Dao are pretty cool to cut with. And there was just one hand. It was like swinging a machete. I like that. I want to go with one. Those big ass, huge two-handers. I want some of those too. Those war swords. Those Dao. I want some of those. So if you're just a backyard cutter, at the end of the day, the best sword for you is the one that you personally want to swing. And it isn't going to be costing you all that much because since you're just treating it as a fun hobby, why make a huge investment? Why are you going to be spending $500 and up for something you're just going to be playing with in your backyard? Just get something cheap and get a sword that you personally find easy to use. And you can chop up your bottles and have fun with that, and then oil it and put it back in your closet or whatever. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money on that. So that would be best for you. But now, let's say you're a practitioner. You want something to practice with. What's best for you? Well, if you're just starting out or you're just doing drills, you really don't need to get a live blade, do you? You just need something that's at the very least balanced correctly for your particular chosen style and weighed correctly, and it's not going to fall apart on you. And those things you don't really need to spend a whole lot of money on. I mean, you got your usual Lung Chuan in the Chinese side of things. Lung Chuan knockoffs, you can go to Chinatown, get one for around $60, $70, and usually that's good enough. So many kung fu schools I see people using those particular ones, and there's some people that's their favorite sword. That's all they're going to ever use. They're not going to move on to a sharpened blade. This is what they will stick with for the rest of their lives. And you know what? Nothing wrong with that. That's what they want. That's what works for them. There you go. If you're just starting out and you're just practicing, you've never handled a live blade before, that's most likely what you want to go for also. If you want something along those lines, that's a bit better high quality, that isn't going to fall apart on you, the fittings aren't rattling on you and stuff like that. Then you might want to look at something like Hanwei, for instance. They got like, the Adam Sujian, which I used to practice with like crazy. This piece right here, which I happen to think has a lot of features on it that are good for beginners, namely the way the handguard is shaped, which helps with you learning your edge alignment. The blade itself is designed in a way that you know that you've done a proper cut, because you get that, that cool sword whistling sound when you whip it through the air. When you hear that sound, you know you got the edge alignment right. So they put things in there to help a beginner or intermediate student know how to do their, movements effectively. So something like this would be cool, and you can get that from Hanwei. The prices fluctuated on them. I picked it up for like $130, but that was years ago, like over a decade ago. Jeez. I'm pretty sure they're still like under $200 to get your hands on that, but that might be a little bit too much of an investment for someone. I'm guessing you could probably pick it up for around 170, 180, 100, depending on where you go. Cult of Athena probably has it at a cheaper price. You can always go look there. And then, like I said, there's also those Lung Chuan knockoffs, which tend to be dull, and they're hopefully you won't hurt anybody with them, and that'll be fine. But now let's say you're part of that niche group that's within the niche group that's within the niche group. The ones that are like, okay, I want to actually learn cutting practice. I want something to work with that. What's best for me? This is where it gets tricky. The Chinese sword market has been growing. It's been getting better. I remember years ago, you were trying to look for something. You were lucky if you could find anything affordable that was actually worth the price you paid. If you were going to be spending at least $500 and up, maybe more, if you wanted a decent sword, and that was way out of the range of the average student. And things started opening up. Like little companies popped up here and there, little forges popped up here and there that started offering sharpened swords that were balanced correctly and weighed more or less correctly, that you could work with. They were sharp, they were cool, and around $250 to $300, somewhere around that, you can get something decent. And the market's been really opening up ever since. Hanwei's kind of jumped on the bandwagon now with Scott Rodell's, cutting gen, though the price on that's kind of jumped up quite a bit. I remember when it used to be around like $250 to $270 to get it. And nowadays you're lucky if you can find it under $300. I know one place you can get it, and that's on Scott Rodell's site directly. But anywhere else is going to be at least $350, and that I think is a bit steep for something that's supposed to be an affordable option. But blame it on inflation, I guess, but that's quite a bit. Or you can check out JKOO Sword, where they got their affordable cutting gen, which seems to be their answer to the Scott Rodell one. You could pick that one up for $160 flat. It doesn't have the name pedigree of Hanwei behind it, but I've done a review on these. I own one of them, and despite the fact there's a couple of things about it that has been going, it's still very serviceable. If this is the first sharp blade you get, you could be doing a whole lot worse. It's made very well. It's, and as an affordable option for somebody just getting into getting a decent cutting gen for practice, it's pretty good. Solid, sharp blade. Mine was constructed quite well. You can customize the handle a bit if you need to for free. I don't like the fact that the handle is a little bit too long, but that's probably, as a counterbalancing measure, and that's a whole other can of worms. I should do that for another video. But generally speaking, it's a really good option. And this is the type of level that you're looking at if you're just getting into sharpened blades. You don't want something that's too expensive, and you don't want something that's going to have a whole lot of bells and whistles on it. You don't need something with gold inlay, silver lining stuff. You don't need silk wrappings. You don't need all those crazy bells and whistles, extra carvings, folded steel. If you're just starting out, just starting cutting practice, a good sharpened mono steel blade made out of 1060 to 1065 steel, or was it 9260 steel, something like that, a good spring steel, that's good enough. In fact, that's more than good enough. It's better than what they used to have in the past. And it's a no frills fittings, things like that. That will do you. Some people, including myself, for a while, that was all we needed. Hell, if I suddenly went back in the past with a weapon like this, people would be, it may look no frills, but the quality of the craftsmanship, as well as how good the blade is, that would have blown people's minds back then. So it's definitely, a good, you could stick with that. You don't necessarily need to move on up, even if you do get advanced. And you find weapons like these in other markets as well. The Japanese sword market is full of swords like this. One company in particular, I think it's called Ronin Swords or Ronin Blades. They got their Dojo Pro line, perfect for people who all they're caring about is something to practice with. But it will still be a good blade to do all their type of training with. They have really good fittings on them, good quality wrappings. They look beautiful. There's so many different versions to choose from. They're all around the higher $200 to like low $300 range. The only catch is that the blades themselves are pure mono steel blades. There's no hamon on them. They're not differentially hardened. They're not folded. But they're like, who cares? Do you want something that functions like a katana and you can cut with it and have a decent beater sword to constantly keep practicing with, or not? You're looking for straight up katana, then that basically tells me that you must be intermediate or advanced. Oh, you're not? Then shut up and pick this thing up and learn how to cut first. I like that mentality. And honestly, they are just really good, honest beaters that can take a pounding and handle the rigors of cutting practice, especially with beginners who don't know how to cut well. So they're going to be pretty hard on their swords because they don't know proper edge alignment and the proper amount of strength needed to make the cut. So they're going to be hard on their swords. Beginners need weapons that can handle those sorts of rigors. Another good company for that in the Japanese market is Chinese. They've been out for years and they still make a really good product at a cheap price. In fact, their whole line is strictly for students who need something to practice with. That isn't going to cost them a lot. That's their whole MO. Great stuff. So if that's the level you're at in the Japanese market, you should look at companies like that, and you're not going to be spending a whole lot. At the most, you'll be spending maybe a little above 300 or so. European market, this is where my ignorance pops in. I don't know where you would look for a decent version like that that's actually going to be good for you. Because I keep hearing so many different things, and I've not handled that many to be able to have my own opinion on it. I mean, I heard that, Hanwei makes a decent longsword, but I've heard from other people that the blades are a little bit too whippy. They're a little too flexible. I've heard, one is a company called Dark Wood Armory or something like that. I might be saying it wrong. Some people used to say that they were great, and then after a while they went downhill in quality. I don't know. Skull would know way more about this than I would. That this is his department. That's his level of expertise. So he would know a lot more about what would be good for a beginner to intermediate student. That a long sword, or I don't know, a side sword, cut and thrust, or something along the lines of for a HEMA practitioner, what's a really good beater for them to get their hands on. But let's say you've gone past that. Let's say you've got some skill and you got some money to spend. You want to reward yourself with a personal piece that fits your particular tastes and your status. Like, this is my heirloom quality sword. This is my, and you're willing to spend at least $500, $600 and up. Well, then your options kind of open up a bit more, especially in the Chinese market. Though it seems that some of the companies that I used to know aren't around anymore. At least I don't know what the hell happened to Zhongwu. In fact, that was the guy who who made that first version of the Hanjin that everybody knows. The first Hanjin I ever got was based on the design that he made. And I remember when he first put that out in the market, it was going for $1,000. And that was back in 2005, 2006. Who knows how much it would have been going for now. But nowadays you can get that same design for under $300, so even under $200 even. So it's like, and I knew that was going to happen. But anyway, these come like One L Sword Art, Zhongwu Sword, a couple of others, Enlightenment Swords. I don't know where these companies are anymore. It seems to have disappeared off the face of the map. Maybe Enlightenment's still around. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're around. I can't find their website anywhere. I've heard rumors that they're still in business, but good luck finding them. Having said all that, there are still some companies that you can get to, like Ryan Sword, for instance. They got some more higher end swords to get your hands on, if that's your thing. WLE.com is a website. It was started by a Chinese martial artist, Shifu Lam, may he rest in peace. His website's still going. He's got plenty of stuff for, Chinese martial artists, as well as like other, martial artists as well, other schools. But his stuff, he leans more toward the Chinese market, and he has swords for just about every level I can think of. It seems to be more for beginner and then advanced. There's very little in the middle, but there's still like, beginning training swords, and then there's like the stuff that costs like $500, $600 and up, and you can find some stuff there. Though I haven't handled any of those pieces, so couldn't tell you, but I heard good things about his company, so there you go. I was going to say LK Tien. LK Chen, though, their swords are very specialized. They're all about making recreations of weapons from particular Chinese dynasties, and they happen to be so specialist that I don't really recommend them for somebody just starting out. Well, except for maybe the Magnificent Chu Jian. The dimensions on that one are very similar to the swords that people in Chinese martial arts use today, so you can get away with that one. But the other ones are so specific and weighed and balanced in such a way that it may throw some people off. To be honest, I haven't really tested this out with a whole lot of people, but the few people who practice Chinese martial arts who've held some of these were quite surprised with them and impressed. They were, of course, surprised by how small the handguards were, and but this is what Han Jian were like back then. This is, and the much longer blades. Like, again, Chinese martial arts are used to swords with, I'm trying to remember, like 77 centimeters, which is about 28 to 30 inches. 30 inches around 80 centimeters. I'm still trying to get the conversions right in my head, but generally speaking, if I'm going to be using, inches as measurements, Jian blades tend to be 28 to 30 inches, then maybe 32, and rarely even further than that. Usually that's what they average. The stuff from LK Chen, they start out at 32 on up, so that's going to throw some people off. Doesn't throw me off. I like them that way, but that's just me. But yeah, something like that for a more advanced student, intermediate to advanced, those are great for them. I don't know if I should say this. I will say this though. I heard in the grapevine they're gonna have a more contemporary one soon, so we'll see. Anyway, there's stuff out there. If I can dig some up, I'll put it there. Japanese market, we already know they got plenty of options for somebody who's got cash to burn and who's more advanced and wants like a real made katana, like a properly made mahogany steel and everything, because they got the skill to wield it, and they got the money to get all the really cool things, like the really intricate designs on the tsuba and silk itos and all that all the stuff that they want. It's going to all be there, as long as they got the cash to burn. And the European market, well, we know about Albion. They make fantastic stuff for a fee, but if you got the skill to use it, there you go, and you got the money to burn for it, there you go. So now I've burnt almost half an hour speaking on this subject and not really gone to anything specific, but this is just a very long form way of me saying the best sword. What's the best sword for you? It depends on your needs. It depends on what you want out of it, and it depends on what you're training in, and the weapon that your chosen tool for your particular art. That's what's going to define what's the best. As far as the nerd wars over what's better, a rapier versus katana, at that point it comes down to skill level and the context of the fight itself, right? And we can be here all day contemplating the ifs, especially since we now live in an age where sword combat isn't really needed anymore. We got guns for a reason, right? So I hope you guys found this entertaining enough and got some decent information out of it. If not, let me know. If you have, let me know. If you guys happen to know about certain companies that you think are worth, that people should know about, definitely let me know. I know, like, if you don't know where to start, Cult of Athena. Seriously, if you're looking for something that, at just about any level, or any of your particular needs or wants out of, getting swords, no matter what your chosen art is, I honestly think you just start at Cult of Athena and just go from there, because they got just about everything. They have good prices. They have great customer service. There. SBG, the SBG sword, SBG store, sorry. That's another good place to start as well. Great prices, a lot of good selections, and most of the stuff tends to be stuff that the owner himself happens to have a lot of trust in, and the guy is really big on making sure, the site has a good reputation, so that's another really good place to go if you're going to be looking for stuff. So, yeah, that's hope I hope that helps you guys to find something that's gonna work for you. It's getting late. I gotta. I'm used to being up late, and I'm a night owl and all that. So, but I hope this guy's helped you out, and I hope you found it entertaining. Plan on having a couple of other videos up soon. So until then, catch you guys later.